Madam Speaker, I ask unanimous consent that all members may have 5 legislative days within which to revise and extend their remarks and include extraneous materials on H.R. 4970 as amended, currently under consideration.
Without objection.
And I yield such time as I may consume. Myself such
Ladies
time.
recognized.
Thank you, Madam. I'm proud to stand in support of this important and life-saving bill. According to national statistics, an average 3 women are killed by a current or former intimate partner a day, every day, and 24 people a day, or per minute I should say, are victims of rape, physical violence, or stalking by an intimate partner. For me, these statistics are way too real. Some of you may already know that at the age of 17, I dropped out of high school and joined the Air Force. I soon married by 18 and had a young daughter. For me, it was a blessing. But I soon found out that the man I married had a penchant for drinking and was very violent when he drank. So I gave him a chance to be the father I thought he could be, and it didn't happen. So I took my daughter, our clothing, and we left. Like many women who leave an abusive relationship, there were times that the only thing that kept me going was knowing that I was responsible for my daughter and she depended on me to make a better life for both of us, where we both felt safe. Years later, I experienced another side of domestic violence while working as a deputy sheriff in the Orange County Sheriff's Office. I encountered many victims who had been abused, whether it was from domestic violence or rape, stalking. These victims were always victims. That's what victims are, all inclusive. But back then, issues like domestic violence and sexual assault weren't really discussed. They were hidden behind closed doors, leaving many of the victims to either underreport or not report at all. They didn't turn for help because they felt helpless. So when the Violence Against Women Act was enacted in 1994, it brought attention to an issue that was underreported, or maybe not even reported at all. 18 years ago, VAWA established with the Justice and Department of Health and Human Services a number of life-saving grant programs for state, local, and Indian tribal governments. Since then, the Act has encouraged collaboration among law enforcement officers, judicial personnel, and public and private sectors providers to provide the help for the victims of domestic and sexual violence. It also addressed the needs of victims of domestic and sexual violence who are elderly, disabled, children, youth, and individuals of ethnic and racial communities, including Native Americans. Congress has twice reauthorized the VAWA grant programs with strong bipartisan support, once in 2000 and again in 2006. Keeping with the bipartisan nature of the Act, the House bill, H.R. 4970, reauthorizes the grant programs in VAWA for a third time at the same funding levels as our colleagues in the Senate agreed to last month. In addition to making several key improvements to the Senate bill, including nearly doubling resources for eliminating the backlog of unprocessed rape evidence kits, the House bill brings greater accountability to VAWA grant administration by ensuring that funding is spent on the victims of the domestic violence, dating violence, sexual assault, and stalking, and not on Washington bureaucrats. To achieve these goals, 4970 requires that the Inspector General of DOJ and HHS conduct an annual audit of at least 10% of all VAWA grant recipients and limits the use of funds for OVW salaries and administrative expenses to 5% of the annual authorization. H.R. 4970 also requires the Attorney General, in consultation with the Secretary of Health and Human Services, to improve the coordination of grants within the Department in order to eliminate duplication and overlap. Make no mistake about it. This is a victim-centered bill which includes all victims, all-inclusive victim-centered bill. Turning this reauthorization into a political issue is not only wrong, but it is dangerous. It is dangerous. We cannot allow domestic violence in this country to become a campaign issue. It must be a reflection of our best efforts as Americans, united against breaking a cycle of violence and helping victims become survivors. I hope my colleagues on both sides of the aisle will join me today in supporting this life-saving legislation, and I reserve the balance of my time.